Hey Dev Team, welcome back to Flutter with Drag. Let's continue with this map where I want to put in a marker so we can actually see where our event is taking place. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing that. The simplest is just to use a marker here. If you're following along, don't follow along with this because I'm going to undo this in a minute. But we could, for example, create a marker here, which we'll call marker even, and that can you call a marker. Now, a marker has to have a marker ID, so I'll just create one of those and we'll just call this test. It doesn't really matter at the moment, it's only an example. And then with the marker, the marker needs to know where it's going to be. So we're going to position that, and the position is going to be the latitude and longitude that we already have. Let's put a comma in there. Invalid constant. Yeah, let's take the const out of there and make that const instead. Okay, and that very simply can be then passed to the map as a set. Well, we've only got one, so I'm just going to pass the one marker as a set. And looking at our screen, you can see now we have a red marker right where the latitude and longitude is. And if we click on it, it gives us the option at the bottom here of getting directions. So if we were at the event, we could click on the directions and it gives us directions from where we are, or at least where the emulator thinks I am, to our next event, which is going to be all very useful for our users. Okay, but this marker itself doesn't give us much in the way of detail, but we can fix that by putting into the marker an info window. So let's do that. And we can say, for example, the title, this is the title. And that then allows us, when we click on the marker, we will get this is the title. And we can put a bit more information there with a bit of snippet of text. And this is some additional info. And again, when we click on it, we get this is the additional info. So that's great. But if we're looking at this map, it's actually very hard to tell that that is not part of the map. You know, like we have McDonald's and Starbucks and what have you with their icons, it's very difficult to see what that actually represents. So I want to put here a custom marker, and I want it to be custom not just to our app, but custom to our event. So that if there were two events happening, so we had another event over here, for example, they would be uniquely different and we could see exactly which one is what. Okay, so that's the plan. To do that, I'm going to delete this marker from here because it's not needed, and just comment out that line for now because we haven't got a marker. Now, to build our unique marker is going to be done in an async function, and we can't do that within our screen. We're going to have to do that within the block. And when we come to our screen state, we created this map page type. And the reason I did that is because in here I want to contain the information that we need for the map. And one of those bits of information is going to be the marker, which we will call marker. Now we'll need to import that from Google Maps like so. And then we'll need a constructor for that. So we'll create the constructor. We'll make it a name constructor because we might need more than the marker later on. but we'll say it's required, and we'll make this a const. With that, we're going to need to override the marker or the props and say that one of the properties it needs to look and compare is the marker property to see if this state has changed. Okay, so now we have somewhere where we can store that marker. We're going to get some error messages, but don't worry, we will sort all that out momentarily. In here then, what we can do is we can get the marker out of that state, and we can say here, anywhere really, that the final marker equals, not marker, equals state page, and then we want to say marker, but at this point it doesn't know what type of class that is, so we'll need to say as event page map, and then we'll be able to get our marker like so. So now we have that marker, just like we did down here, we can insert it into our map. Now, of course, that's all going to break because we don't have a map yet, we don't have a marker. So we can come back to our block, and basically we're going to create the marker here. We're going to build a marker. So we're going to say final marker equals, it's going to be a private function, build marker. And we're going to pass that marker then to the event page like so. So let's create this private function. In fact, we can just create the method build marker like so. And what we're going to do here, this is going to return a marker. We're going to, for now, just to make sure this is all working, is return a marker with a marker ID of test, like so. Now we need the position, and we're going to get the permission from the state and from the event. So we will pass into the build marker a state event page or event screen loaded state, and we can pass the state through here, and we need to make sure we pass it through as an event screen loaded. So in here we now have the event, so we can get the event out. We can say final event equals state event, and then within this we can put our position, and the position is going to be a latitude longitude of event lat event long. I have to get rid of the const again. This is the issue of it putting it in automatically for us. But now we have a marker being built, and if we do a refresh, we should find that that works for us. Okay, so there we are. We've got our marker back in, but now it's being built within our state. Okay, that's not quite what we want now. We want to make this unique. So let's look at building our marker. So the first thing is the marker ID can't be test because they've got to be unique, and something that is very definitely unique is our event ID. So the marker ID can be made with our event.id, and now that can't be a const, but that will make sure that marker is unique. So if we have multiple markers on a page, it knows what's going on. We're going to have an info window, and that's going to be an info window, and the title is going to be the event title, and the snippet is going to be the event address. Okay, so if we save that and click on our icon, nothing happens because we need to reload that. So let's click on event details, event location, that gets rebuilt, and now we get that information. But what I really want to do is change the icon, and the way I'm going to do that is by creating a graphic on the fly. So we can do it fairly simply in here by putting an icon, and the icon is going to need to be the marker icon, and we're going to do that by generating it on the fly, and that will give us a set of bytes, basically a string of bytes that we can then convert into a bitmap. So we can put in here bitmap descriptor from bytes, and we'll insert something. We'll insert marker icon, and then we need to create that. Bytes is stored here as a unsigned integer list. So let's create one of those. Final uint 8 list called marker icon equals, and then we're going to have to build that graphic. So I'm going to create a new function called build marker, and that's going to need the event because we're going to take some details. Okay, now this doesn't exist yet, so let's come down here and create it. Build marker. Okay, so our build marker is going to be asynchronous because some of the things we're going to have to do in here are going to take a little bit of time. So it's going to return a future uint 8 list, uint 8 list, which means we'll need to put the await here to make sure that it awaits for us, which means we need to put async here, and then this marker is going to be a future. So coming back up here, this marker is going to have to await the result of the build marker. That's not needed. Okay. The value of type marker can't be assigned. I've got two things here called build marker. This should be build marker icon. Okay, so that's going to take in a conference event, and now we can, let's just save that to do some formatting. We can now build our marker. So how do we do this? Well, we've done this in previous series with animations and stuff. Basically, we're going to create a canvas and we're going to draw onto that canvas. So let's do that. Let's do it step by step. Final canvas, and we'll call it canvas, equals a canvas. Now canvas takes a recorder, which is something called a picture recorder. Does it explain here? So it creates a canvas for recording graphical operations to the given picture recorder. So we need a picture recorder. So final picture recorder, which we will call picture recorder, and that's just going to equal a picture recorder. And so we'll pass that into our canvas when we make our canvas. Okay, the canvas is also going to need some paint colors because we paint on it. And so final paint, let's just create one paint to start with, equals paint, and we're going to set a color initially to be our app colors primary. Okay, double equals, there we go, so we have a paint. Excellent. So what I want to do is draw a box, and in that box I want to have the text, which initially is going to be the name of the event. We might put more stuff in there later, but initially it's just the event title. And I want to then have a little arrow on the top of the box pointing to the right location. So to paint some text onto our canvas, we're also going to need a text painter. And I'll just call this painter. And this is going to equal a text painter, which takes, we need to put in a text direction. And the text direction here is going to be left to right. Okay. So then we set the text for that. So painter.text equals text span, and then the text is going to be the event title. We can also set a style for this, and the style I want is our app fonts style, headline 1, but if you remember, that is our primary color, and so if we paint our primary color onto a box which is already our primary color, we're not going to see anything. So I'm going to do a copy with color and change the text color to our orange. Okay, so now we have a canvas ready to be painted on. We have our text, and the reason we have it's useful to use the span is because we can put other lines at different styles and more stuff underneath that. That will work out for us later on should we need to. Okay, we now need to work out the height of our box, and that's going to be dependent on how big this text is, and certainly the width. You know, we might say, well, the line is always going to be a certain height if it's one line, but depending on the length of the number of characters in the title, we don't know the width. However, Painter has the ability to give us the height and width. So final height equals Painter height to an integer. We need to convert it to an integer. And we can do exactly the same with width. Painter width. However, we have to do something before the painter knows how big it is. In fact, if we hover over here, it will tell us. It says valid only after layout has been called. So at the moment, I don't know, this is not going to work. But what we can do is call painter.layout, and that will sort out creating the painter, and we'll get the height and the width and various other bits into it. Okay, that is our setup. Next, we need to draw onto our canvas the rectangle background. So I'm going to say canvas draw and I'm going to put draw rectangle, and then it takes a rectangle. And so we can say here, we're going to say rectangle from left top width height. Okay, so where do we want this to start? Well, the top left of our image is 0, 0. So the left is going to be 0, the top is going to be 0. We want it to go the full width of our whatever has been calculated, and the height. The problem here is these require double, and these are integers, and we need these to be integers because later on we will need to access those as integers. So here I'm just going to convert those to doubles, and then we tell it what paint we want to use. Okay, so the paint is the one that we've set up here. Whoop. There. So we've got that paint, the rectangle. On top of that rectangle now we need to paint the text. So we can do that by calling our painter and saying paint. And we're going to paint it on the canvas, and we need to say where on the canvas we're going to paint it. So we'll just put offset 0 for now, like that. Now we need to get our image out of the recorder. So final image equals await, and this is why it needs to be an async function, picture recorder dot end recording, and then convert it to an image of width and height. And these can't be, these need to be integers. That's why I left width and height as integers, because we need it there. Okay, so we now have our image, which we need to convert into byte data. So final data equals await image to byte data, and we have to give it a format, and the format is going to be image byte format PNG. Okay, that's where we can have a transparency. We're then going to return that data buffer as a uint 8 list, and then we're going to say that we know that's not null. Okay, let's try that and see where we get. So coming to our map, come off that page and go back to the page. There we are. We've now got our image with our text in it. Okay, we need to smarten this up a little bit though. So the first thing I want to do is put some padding around it. And we can do that by changing the final height and width by adding, say, 30 to the width and the height. That will allow us to have 15 either side. So doing that and coming back to it, you can see that's given us the padding, but now our text isn't centered. So to center it, we need to come to our offset, and we need to do a little bit of calculation here. What we need to do is we need to say we want to center the X at whatever the width of the screen is, divide by 2 or multiply by 0.5 minus the painter width, or at least half of that. And the same with the height. Okay, So what is this doing? Well, we're taking the width of our canvas, which is 30 more than the width of our painter, and we're subtracting it from half of the width of the painter, and that will give us the offset that we need to position our painter. Okay, so let's save that and come back to our page, and now we have centered text. Okay, next I think I want to round the corners of this box so it's not sharp, and we can do that by, instead of drawing a rect here, I'm going to convert this to a rect, which is a round rectangle, and then we need to wrap this rectangle inside a rect. Let's try that again. Rect dot from rectangle and or radius, from radius. It's going to be the same radius each way, so we're going to use that one. So we have a rectangle now. Let's get that in the right place. But we also need to have a, what we'll do is we'll have a radius circular, and we'll put in 20. Okay, so let's come off the details and go back. There we are. We now have our rounded corners. Next, I want to put a little arrow on the top here, just a short one. So to do that, we need to move everything down. So I'm going to want the arrow to be 20 high. So it means the top of our box there needs to be 20 down further. So instead of saying from the top 0, we're going to say from the top 20. We're then going to have to change the height here and add 20 to it, because we want to push it down 20 more. And then the height of the whole image needs to be 20 more as well. Okay, so after we've drawn our background and before we draw our text, although it doesn't really matter, but we need to do it here, we're going to create a path like so. We're also going to need to know what the center point is, so we will do a calculation and we will get a double, let's call it halfway, equals width divided by 2 or times 0.5, whichever you prefer. Okay. So we're going to move this line. Now we're going to move the cursor, if you like, the point, to a position, and we're going to move it to the halfway point minus 20 pixels and then 20 down from the top. We're then going to line to the halfway point 0, and then we're going to path line to the halfway point plus 20, 20. That will create us a triangle, which we then need to draw to the screen, which we can do with draw path, and we draw it with the path that we've just created and paint. Okay, let's go back, have a look, and there we have our little arrow. But this location is all wrong. It actually should be pointing here. And the way we can fix that is up here in our marker, we need to set the offset or the anchor point for that. And that is, it's going to be a constant offset, and we want it to be on the X halfway and on the Y 0, so at the top. So this is the point that it's actually pointing to, the offset. And we're saying halfway across our image, because that's where our arrow is, right at the top. That's the tip of the arrow. So now when we come to it, we have our arrow pointing at the exact GPS coordinates that we've got in, or the latitude, longitude coordinates that we've got. Okay, now just a warning is this isn't very good from an accessibility point of view, because this isn't text, this is a graphic, and the graphic can't be read by most screen readers. So we will keep this information in because the screen readers can deal with that, but our marker is very clear, and we could actually increase what we do here. You know, we could put the starting time starting in 10 minutes, or you know, we could put other bits of information there that might be useful to the user. But that, folks, is how we go about creating a custom marker on the fly in Flutter. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, it does help me out. And we'll see you next time, where we will continue on with this app. Until then, take care, folks. Bye now.